We're live now, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the 23rd of October 2025 meeting of Powys County Council Governance and Audit Committee. Today's meeting is a very full agenda with some particularly important pieces of work, not least the council accounts and the pension accounts. So today is an important meeting for this committee, and before we even start, I would like to thank all officers involved in its preparation for the hard work that goes into these significant pieces of work in support of the council and the committee's statutory responsibilities. Having said that, I will move us on to agenda item 1 and ask Carrie-Anne to record any apologies that have been received for the meeting. Carrie-Anne?
Yes, Chair. We have received apologies for absence from Committee Member County Councillor Adam Kennelly, Cabinet Members County Councillors David Thomas, Pete Roberts and James Gibson-Watt, from Officers Mary Thomas and Dr Richard Jones, and Swap Officer Ian Halstead.
Thank you very much, Carrie-Anne. Thank you. Agenda item 2, disclosures of interest. If any committee members could please alert us to any potential conflicts of interest or conflicts of interest in connection with the agenda today. If there are none, we'll move on. Agenda item 3. We are asked to approve the minutes. Prior to seeking the committee's approval of these minutes, I will pause and seek committee members' views. Are there any points of correction, clarification, or matters arising in connection with the minute from our September the 10th meeting? I can see Councillor Pete has got his hand up. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's minute 3 on page 6 in the pack, and I had 2 points actually. First one is there's a couple of missing answers in the minute altogether there, so I just wondered when we are likely to get them, and then specifically the response in respect to the first point says that the whistleblowing policy and annual report will come to the committee on an annual basis in July. Well, July now seems a long way away, and by the time we get there, it will be almost 2 years, or in fact, I think more than 2 years, since we last saw an annual report. So I just wondered if I could request if we could see a latest one as soon as possible before going to an annual basis in July 2026. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Let's just address the response received gaps first. And I'm also noticing, thank you, Councillor Pete, for drawing our attention to it. The second little gap is actually my raising that there was a gap in the previous minutes in terms of officer responses. So we actually have 2 sets of minutes to go back to for officer responses. So I'll just ask if officers could ensure that something goes in those spots, please, in respect of the previous discussion. And can anyone pick up is anyone in this meeting who can pick up Councillor Pete's point about bringing a whistleblowing report so that that's our starting point for regular reporting rather than waiting until July? Clive, I can see you just put your camera on. Clive? I think you're on mute still. Or
sorry, Chair. I've literally only just joined, so if you were asking me a question, I haven't heard what the question was.
Sorry. Pete, would you like to repeat your question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I thought you would have known things like that by now, Clive. But anyway,
I am psychic, Councillor Pete, but the distance between where you are and where I am is a long way.
I will bear that in mind for future, my friend. Yeah. It's I'm on. If you've got the pack open, Clive, it's minute 3 on page 6. But the response there is around the whistleblowing policy and annual report, which says could come to committee on an annual basis in July. So my question really was July 2026 now is a long way away. And could we perhaps see the latest report as soon as possible before going to the annual basis in July 2026?
Councillor Pete, as you're aware, the actual policy is reviewed by HR. In fact, not by me, although Debbie is involved. So I don't know the answer to the question, but it's one which I can assure that I'll take instructions on from HR and come back to you, the committee, with that suggestion from yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Clive. Sorry, it does also include the annual reports.
Yes,
as
it
well
does.
as the whistleblowing policy, and I thought you did the annual report.
Oh, I do the annual report. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I was just wondering whether we could see the latest one of that rather than wait till July 2026.
We can bring the figures to you, Councillor Pete, together with the additional things that you've mentioned in report. We could do that. We could certainly do that. What I'm not able to tell you is whether we have an amended report which we can bring to you. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just reading it now. I think the recommendation was actually made in September, which of course is after July. So I presume the 1st July that follows following the recommendation and agreement of the recommendation is next July. More than happy to share the current policy with all members of the committee.
Yes.
So you've got that as a reference point. But I suggest, Chair, that might be the best way to proceed.
Mm-hmm. Right. So an interim paper and then start from July. I'll need to refer back.
No, I'm not suggesting an interim report. I'm suggesting that we share the policy that went through audit committee not that long ago, and clearly the working group have had a really detailed look at that policy. So I will just share the policy for now, and we will have the first refresh then next July 26 rather, if of course it's needed. The policy may still be current at that point, but that will be the annual review starting from next July.
I'll bring you in, Councillor Pete, but even if the policy doesn't need reviewed, surely there'll be an annual report on.
Oh,
there'll be annual report, Chair. Absolutely.
Yeah. Pete.
Yeah, I think you've just answered my question of clarity, Lynn, because I think it's already now over a year since we saw the last annual report. But yeah, happy with
I think we're conflating the policy reviews with the annual report, and they're not the same thing. So I think Councillor Pete's focus is on the annual report rather than on the policy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, right, okay. But are we saying that we can't have the report until July next year?
Chair, the annual report should be an annual thing, shouldn't it? So whatever date the annual report came, and I don't know what the date the annual report came, we should be aiming to have it 12 months or shortly thereafter, shouldn't we?
Right. Well, I don't think we'd have to ask the Secretariat to look back at the record, but I'm pretty confident that we haven't had an annual report in the last 12 months.
Okay. Chair, Jane and I will take this away and come back to committee on the next occasion, okay?
Much appreciated, Clive and Jane. Thank you very much. Are there any further comments, questions or points of clarification on the minute from the 10th of September? There are none. Is the committee content to, subject to those boxes on page 6 being completed, is the committee content to approve these minutes? John has proposed and I need a seconder, and I have Councillor Pete. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. I'll move us on to Audit Wales items and agenda item 4. And agenda item 4 is a really important Audit Wales review of risk management in the council, and I believe that this is a review that has been taking place across Wales. So many other local authorities have had risk management reviews conducted over the last few months. I'll ask Gareth from Audit Wales to briefly introduce the paper, and then look to Anne to speak to the council's response. Gareth. Is Gareth with us? Is Eros with us if Gareth's not?
Sorry, Chair. Gareth has just messaged to say that his connection to Zoom has just dipped
failed.
out. Yeah.
Have we got Eros? No.
I'll just have a look on the.
Oh, we've got.
Oh, yeah,
Hi.
he is
we've
here.
got. Eros, we've got you down here as Gareth on the screen.
Oh, it's very confusing. I used the link to join and I'm suddenly Gareth. Apologies,
That's
Chair.
probably why Gareth's link is failed. Sorry.
I'm happy to briefly introduce item, Chair, if that helps.
Yeah. If carry on, if we could find a way to bring Gareth back in, and Eros can give us a wee brief introduction.
Yes,
Yep,
Chair,
no problem.
we're probably going to have to remove Iros and get Gareth in on
Okay.
his link because they can't share links, but leave it with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Kath.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So in terms of the purpose of the report tabled before you today, I guess the audit assessed whether the council's corporate risk management arrangements are effectively supporting the delivery of its strategic objectives. So we focus primarily on risk identification, management, risk monitoring, and reporting around risk. So those are the four key areas that we looked at as part of the report. In terms of review, we identify some strengths in the council's approach. So, for example, there's an improved framework in place around corporate risk management. So we recognise and acknowledge the improvements made in 2023, when the council did enhance its risk management framework. And equally, from the outside looking in, as our external auditors, it's very clear to see the emphasis that senior leadership and the Governance and Audit Committee in particular promotes in terms of that positive risk management culture as well. And thirdly, I would say that the fact that the council has a defined risk appetite in place and has articulated that clearly is another strength that came through in terms of the review. A few areas for improvements identified as well, Chair, in terms of review. So firstly, in terms of the strategic alignment, so risks were not consistently linked to the council's strategic objectives around stronger, fairer, greener agenda. Horizon scanning was another area for improvement in terms of identifying the emerging risks and how the council goes about doing that. We also articulate some of the areas for improvement around smart actions and control measures in place and how those could be strengthened by being a bit more specific, measurable, achievable, and realistic and time-bound in the way that they are framed. And finally, I guess, around monitoring impact as well. So the effectiveness of risk controls is not consistently demonstrated or articulated in the council's approach currently. So overall, Chair, I would say a few strengths identified through the review, but some areas for improvement as well. In terms of recommendations, we've made 4 as part of the review. So firstly, looking at improving the risk identification process, so making sure that risks are aligned with strategic objectives and enhancing further that horizon scanning approach. And in doing that as well, increasing the focus on in particular on training to make sure that things are embedded and making sure that they're working as they should. Secondly, looking at strengthening the risk management approach in terms of applying and communicating the risk appetite and tolerance across the council, and ensuring there's clarity around contributions to cross-cutting risks as well and how they are managed. The third recommendation is about enhancing the monitoring and reporting of risks by developing smart controls measures and evaluating the effectiveness of risk controls as well. And the fourth recommendation relates to evaluating the changes made in 2023 and judging, I guess, whether they are delivering the intended benefits. In terms of the management response, Chair, I would say we've had constructive dialogue with the council and with officers in terms of grading that response. We would invite colleagues to elaborate and clarify some elements, in particular in relation to the response to recommendation 4, But I'll leave it there, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iris, and thank you to Gareth as well for his work on this report. Before I open the conversation to the committee for questions and points, I'll look to Anne to if there's anything she wants to add to the management response before I open it up to the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I think the response is fairly clear. First of all, I must just say thank you as well for acknowledging that we actually have moved forward. We took on board actions from 2023, and we've certainly moved forward with those, as is highlighted by Audit Wales. I think there's a bit about evidence in what we do as an organisation. In actual fact, what became apparent through planning the response and looking at the recommendations as we went through the audit as well, is actually a lot does happen. Of course, we horizon scan. Of course, we do informal training in quarterly management teams and other meetings. What we don't have, though, is some of the formality and the evidence of documented aspects of things that take place. So I think that what came out quite strongly from our perspective is making sure we can evidence through minutes and meetings and things that actually do take place to help inform some of the risks and the actions and the things that we put in place through our reporting processes. You can see from the response is that we're planning to have a workshop that will take forward quite a lot of the actions and things that we want to try and put in place. We've also got a session with Cabinet to try with the aim to finalise the risk appetite policy and bring that up to date. Then that can get embedded and we'll be able to update JCAD and roll out our software with more functionality, which will really help embed that risk appetite as well down the line. Just to pick up on point 4, because I know there was a question about understanding what point 4 is, going to do, the narrative is probably quite a high level. Actually, with that, we have got review approaches in place. We've got the AGS, we've got our FM code. So we've got regimes to undertake that. We don't want to set up another regime for monitoring and reflection. So what we expect to do is do it within that regime and have a good look and to be sure that actually the things that were suggested in 23 and we know that we've put in place, because of course that flows through swap actions, have actually delivered those consequences. So it's working out what the best arena is to bring that update back into. That's what we still need to put on, to work with. Is it GAC? Is it GAC working group? And then we'll be able to produce that piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Chris, then Councillor Pete, and Jane's got her hand up as well. And Gareth. Jane, can I come back to you at the end and bring in, so I'll go Chris, Pete, Gareth. Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report. I think it's really helpful. A couple of queries from me. First of all, I'm going to page 31, and it's point 12 on there. You mentioned about the SMART objectives. Those are nothing new. SMART has been around for quite some time. So it surprised me in relation to this commentary. And I just wanted to get an understanding of, is this about awareness? Is there a training gap need? Is it workload, or is it number of staff available to be able to do it? Because I don't understand that if you're working on a project, you would instantly be moving in that direction to have that evidence base. So clarification on that. Then if I go to page 41, under recommendation 1, I think it's part of the management action. About this workshop, on the one is, I didn't see any explanation of what JCAD was, so that would be helpful. But this risk workshop, is that going to be opened up? And I particularly wondered whether, particularly from the, and I'll put the chair and the vice chair's name in the, are they going to be included within that? And is that going to extend to other council colleague members? But the other concern I have is that if we've not got some of these systems in place, is the deadline of 31st of March 26 too long? And does that expose us to any greater risk by not doing it earlier? And I would wanted to know the rationale for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring in all of the members to ask the questions first, and then we'll go back to officers rather than go ping pong. Yeah, Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I had two questions, if I may. Page 28 was the first one under the heading of identifying risks, and I was looking specifically at points 2 and point 7, and I guess my question was in the context of whether this was looking at our risk management process as a whole, because obviously when we do impact assessments, we need to look at emerging risks and opportunities in there. And the points 2 and point 7 seem to be indicating that there were some learning points and issues to be addressed in there. So I was just trying to get a feel for if this does also cover impact assessments, do these points apply? And if so, how big an issue is it? And the other point is following on slightly from what Councillor Chris was saying, page 45 around the smart controls. The management response, so apologies again for the sniffles, Chair. The management response says that not all controls have to be smart. And I wonder which ones weren't smart or can't be made smart. And then at the end of the day, I was trying to work out, if you like, who wins. Is it management or the audit team? Thanks.
Thank you. Just before I bring in Gareth on the smart point, I guess I would agree with Councillor Pete and Councillor Chris. If the objective or the control measure isn't smart, how do we know if we've hit the target? How do we know if we've achieved it or not? If we can't be specific, measurable,
Yeah.
you know, etc., etc. Gareth Hall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My comment is also on page 28 of the where the item 4 of the Audit Wales report, where it states that the council has a clear approach to differentiate between risks and issues. This is very much welcome because this has been a concern of this committee ever since I joined over 3 years ago. So that confirmation is very much welcomed. But the question I'd ask is, will the audit committee be given the same degree of visibility on the issues register as it has on the council's risk register in terms of processes and governance arrangements?
Thanks, Gareth. Thank you very much. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to go back to number 5 on the identifying risks, if I may. The number of officers who have received training on risk management is low. It states I'm really concerned about that, and I'd like some more information on that. Rather low is not very specific. It'd be useful for us to know how many have actually received any training on risk management, and what the percentage is that of the officers that should have had it. I think that just needs to be cleared up. It's disappointing that that's been identified when risk management is recognised as such a serious part of audit for this council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. I would just add to Councillor Graham's report. My recollection is that and I can't remember the date, so forgive me, but a couple of years ago, we received an internal audit report on risk. And at that point, the committee made quite a running of risk training amongst staff. And there was quite a discussion took place then in the light of the internal audit report. And my recollection is at that point we were given assurance that there would be risk management training as part of the induction training for staff. So perhaps that won't be something that can be bottomed out exactly today unless someone's got a better memory than I have, but I do think perhaps it's worth going back to the commitments that were given in the light of the internal audit report a couple of years ago as well. Jane, can I bring you in and Anne to answer questions from members, Chris, Pete, Gareth, and Councillor Graham?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll try and cover off as many as possible so that we bit slicker
Yeah.
on time.
Thank
They
you.
may not be in the right order, but
That's
bear
okay.
with me. So Councillor Pete asked about risk management and whether it was a whole system or was it just the risk report. Yes, this report looks at the whole risk management system, so it encompasses everything that we do in terms of managing risk. So just to clarify on that point. In terms of impact assessments consider risk. There is a separate section for impact assessments, and obviously impact assessments are provided when there is a change in decision or a change in policy, and that would be reflected. And again, the same system in terms of what we use would be applied in that instance as well, considering risk appetite and so on and so forth. From a SMART perspective, we held a workshop last week actually with senior managers. It wasn't specifically on risk. It was looking at integrated business planning and actions within integrated business plans and reinforcing the need for all actions to be smart, irrespective of where they sit across the organisation. So we did a practical workshop with managers just to reinforce that need, and hopefully that will strengthen some of the application and to make sure that all of those things are smart as we move forward. JCAD is our risk management system. You see that routinely. All of the reports that you see through Audit Committee are run from that system. So that is just the system within which we actually operate our risk management. There was a discussion then about workshops and whether Audit Committee would be included in those risk workshops. No, that's not appropriate. Those risk workshops are operational. They are for operational staff to strengthen. In terms of Audit Committee, your role is very much about reviewing the processes that we have in place and the assurance there. We could share with you perhaps what we would deliver through those management systems, through those workshops with staff, but I don't think it's appropriate for members to actually be at those operational workshops, but happy to share that information. A question from Councillor Pete about whether we get the actions smart and you know, when everything is in place and we've strengthened some of those elements that have been highlighted, who wins? The council wins, our residents win, everybody wins, because we have a much more effective risk management approach. So, you know, I think that would be a win for everybody in terms of those, and Audit would be happier in terms of strengthening those. So I think we all win from that perspective. Talking about training, and Bets may want to come in and cover this off in a bit more detail, but what we're referring to in the report here is the refresh training. That doesn't mean managers across the organisation have not had training previously. We had videos and so on that people have reviewed. I don't think we've necessarily got numbers available today as to who did that, but you know, it's important that people refresh, but I didn't want you taking away that the officers haven't been trained. In addition to that, Bets routinely meets with service areas, be it the management team, and they have a sit down and looking at that risk management on a routine basis. And we probably don't capture the people that are actually included in those service specific training sessions either. So there is an awful lot of things that go on, but yes, it's important to note that, of course, in terms of that. Who requires that training? I would suggest that it is senior managers and everybody at a higher level within the organisation. They are the key owners, heads of service are owners of risk, and that's why our workshop will include all senior managers, and any that are unable to attend, we will be able to pick those up and provide them with the data and the details from those training sessions. I'm not sure if I've covered everything. I'll look to Anne or Bets to come in if I've missed anything. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jane. I think from my perspective, I don't think we're clear about management response number 4. I don't know whether you want to revisit the wording on that management response, but I don't think that's clear in terms of Governance and Audit Committee's role.
I think we probably need to review it, and we can share it. I mean, the report is finalised now, so it is done, but that doesn't mean for our own perspective we can change it to make sure. But I'm not sure Audit Wales colleagues would change it now. I'll look to them to respond to that, but more than happy to tweak it so it is clear.
Perhaps we need to come back to that one. Bets, you wanted to come in response to some of the questioning.
Yeah, no, Jane has been very concise and very comprehensive, but just, yes, to add to the training, just to say, unfortunately, we don't have the figures prior to 2024 because it's all recorded by our learning and development team. And unfortunately, and I don't know the detail on this, but the figures aren't available pre-2024. Pre-2024, we just had the e-learning video. Since 2024, when we did the relaunch, we now offer that video, but we also offer face-to-face training, which is myself. I do it on a quarterly basis, and as to date, we've always had a full house, and there's been very positive feedback on it. And I believe there's positive feedback that we have shared previously, like anecdotal comments, etc. Finally, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember the councillor that asked, but in relation to staff induction, yes, we did introduce it into staff induction, but obviously because I'm quite old hat, I haven't done staff induction in a long time, but what I'm led to believe it is quite a light touch, as are other elements similar to risk management because of the time constraint and delivering to officers. So it's light touched, and they're given directions, pointers to where to go for more information, which would include myself. But as Jane has just pointed out, I attend the majority of SLTs, and I would say do a lot of training, but it's kind of like informal in those SLTs when they want to know how to do something, want advice, feedback, etc. And unfortunately, that isn't really recorded in our official training figures because it is anecdotal attending SLTs. So that's all, Chair. Just wanted to add to the training element.
Thank you very much, Bets. Right.
Oh.
We do need to move on from this item, but I can see some hands, and it is important. So I'm going to just give us another few minutes on this item. I can see Gareth Hall, Councillor Graham, Councillor Pete, and Gareth Jones, who is the reports owner, as it were, within Audit Wales. Gareth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, my point relates to recommendation 1 from Audit Wales, which makes recommendations about improvements in arrangements for the council identification of corporate risk and opportunities. There's been a lot of focus on risks, but is there a formal process of the council for identifying opportunities, which is the other side of the coin?
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks to Jane and Bets for explaining that. While I accept entirely everything they're saying, it is a point that in point 5 it does say very few officers have attended training since mid 2024. Now that if that's not correct, it needs to be corrected, or if it is correct, we need to attend to that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Thank you, and Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So having listened to the responses, and thanks, Jane and Bets, for those. I just wanted to go back to the points 2 and 7, just for my own clarity, I guess, really. Point 2 sort of says it's unclear how these activities help us to consider emerging risks and opportunities. And that's important when we're making strategic decisions. I guess if it's unclear how it's helping us, it's like, why are we doing it? If we should be doing it, what are we doing to make it clear? Because I'm concerned that's giving me the impression that we're not identifying and flagging up these risks, which are quite important, obviously, especially when we get to impact assessments. And then a similar sort of thing under number 7, which says, a more thorough assessment of the potential impacts of risks would enable us to better understand their severity. So again, if we're not doing that thorough assessment, what have we got to do to get to that thorough assessment? And I guess in relation to those 2 points, I'm not seeing clearly what the impacts are if we're not doing what we should be doing at the moment, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. I'll leave that with officers to come back to. Gareth, before I bring you in, I just want, from the sort of Chair's perspective and the deep dives, I just want to put on the record that the committee is noting Audit Wales's comment on the deep dives, and we will of course look at our terms of reference and in the spirit of continuous improvement and seek to enhance our approach and respond to your comments, particularly with an eye on risk appetite and risk tolerance as we go forward with future deep dives. So very grateful for those helpful comments. I am also going to look to Audit Wales colleagues to help me with the page 47 management response to recommendation 4. Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the technology that's got in our way today. Just very quickly on recommendation 4, we're more than happy to work with officers to clarify recommendation 4, and we'll find an appropriate way to make sure that the committee are made aware of what the revised wording, if any, is around recommendation 4, so there is clarity for Governance and Audit Committee officers and Audit Wales in terms of recommendation 4. So we will take that away in the spirit of the agenda today, Chair, to work with them, and we'll liaise with yourself and officers around how best to get that communicated to the members of the committee. The report is factually correct in terms of point 5 that Councillor Breeze has been asking around in terms of the low levels of training. Those are correct. That is based on the data that we had at the point that we did the report, and there is an action in the management response form in terms of actually taking that forward and ensuring that training is taken up that we are content with at this point. Obviously, there will be actions that stem from that the council will report back on to its regulatory tracker in due course. So you'll be able to pick up the updates on that as and when those come through. On point 2 and point 7, Councillor Lewington, there are responses in the management response form that actually respond to the comments that you've made around those in terms of strengthening the horizon scanning and strengthening the opportunities. So the council has taken action to address those points. Obviously, it's very early days at this point in terms of what's actually been happening and what is happened, but there is a plan and there is clarity around what will happen from the council's perspective to address those areas that we've picked up in the audit.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Very much appreciated. And just before I bring Anne and Jane back in for the final comment, because we do need to move on, I would like to just pick up on Gareth Hall's request earlier around now that the council has adopted an issues log approach, it would be helpful from a governance perspective for the Governance and Audit Committee to understand the policy and procedure and operational management of that. I mean, we may or may not receive regular reports in the way that we receive the quarterly strategic risk reports. But if an issues log is being used as a key instrument of governance in the council, I think Governance and Audit Committee would like to understand the process and procedure underpinning it, if that could be added to the forward work plan going forward. That would be incredibly helpful, because it is a huge step forward and a real positive to understand that that approach has been adopted as part of the authority's continuous improvement journey, which is very, very apparent over the past couple of years. I'll give Jane the last word on this item, and then we will need to move on.
And I think, Chair, taking on board your comments around the issues log, you know, it's new for us. We're starting to use it. We probably need to look at the process around that and everything that you mentioned. So we'll definitely take that away. And I just wanted to support what Gareth said about point 5 and the training. That particular training referred to is a specific refresh training that has been set up by Bets and the team, and it's that that's being referred to when we say take up is low. So although there's a lot of other things happening, that particular training hadn't been completed by as many officers as we would like, and that is being picked up.
Thank you very much, Jane. And I trust the committee is happy to note this report and to thank Audit Wales and officers for the work going into bringing the report to the committee today. Thank you, Gareth, for clarifying that we can just smooth out management response to recommendation number 4, and the committee will be able to monitor responses via our regular reviews of the regulatory tracker. And I think, given the importance of risk management, that's something that this committee will be paying particular attention to. But for now, I would like to thank everyone involved in the report, especially Bets, because Bets hasn't spoken up very much in this meeting, but I would like to extend my thanks to Bets, because she does serve us extremely well in respect of her approach to risk management across the council. Bets, I can see your hand up, but I do need to move on. Is that okay?
It's gone.
It's gone. And just, you know, thanks,
Oh,
Bets.
sorry, Chair. I just literally wanted to say, thank you very much. But what I want to say is, I am here. For some reason, you can't see me, and I don't know what's going on, but I have been here throughout the whole meeting.
I know you've been here throughout. I know, and thank you to the work that you do on our approach to risk management. But I do need to move us on, or we will be here for far too long. We're going to move to corporate items. I'm going to move to agenda item 5, which is a statement of accounts. And I'm going to ask Dan to join us. He's joined us. I can see him, just to briefly introduce 2024 statutory account for Powys County Council. Dan.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, members. Today I'm asking the committee to consider the enclosed letter of representation where the council confirms the accuracy and completeness of information provided to Audit Wales during the audit and the audited statement of accounts, which are page 56 to 124 of the pack. We will be asking the committee to authorise the chair and the Section 151 officer to sign the documents after representations are made by myself and Audit Wales in these next 2 agenda items. The draft accounts were signed by the Section 151 officer on the 30th of June, meeting the deadline set out by the Welsh Government. This committee attended a seminar then on July the 11th, with the main changes of the accounts were explained and questions raised by committee members were addressed. On the 16th of October, a seminar was conducted primarily concerning the Audit of Wales Audit of Accounts report. The seminar reviewed the pertinent points of that paper and addressed this year's experience, and also looked forward to next year's preparation, where we will see the date of the Audit of Accounts approval brought forward a month to the end of September. The Auditor General intends to issue an unqualified opinion of the accounts pending receipt of the certified letter of representation and the approved statement of accounts. Within the Audit of Accounts report, we highlight that all the misstatements have been corrected, and the corrections can be found on Appendix 2, page 200 of Audit Wales's report. The Auditor's report also includes an appendix which lays out 2 recommendations which the Council has accepted. In relation to the first, work has begun with the new system provider, and officers are familiarising themselves with that system, and we will look to develop the best means of pulling out the accounts for not next year, but the year after. So that will be the 26-27 accounts. And the second recommendation looks at the monitoring of system administrator activity across a number of systems. We are currently trying to get up-to-date positions from officers, and also looking at what suppliers can provide to assist in meeting this recommendation. Both of these recommendations will be entered on the regulatory tracker, so that they will be monitored for their progress. Before considering the recommendation, we ask that the committee consider the comments from Audit Wales. If I have no further questions, I can pass you on to Emma to present the Audit of Accounts report.
Thank you. I think I'll pass straight over to Emma, and then I'll invite questions or comments from members following Emma's commentary as well. Emma.
Thanks, Chair. As Dan has said, we're planning on issuing an unqualified opinion, which is within the report. And I should say, actually, before I start, that I would like to say thank you to Dan, James, and the rest of the finance team. Without their cooperation and hard work, our hard audit work would be even harder. So I just want to say thanks to the team, because it does help when we work together. So the main thing is it's an unqualified opinion. There is a significant, it's not significant, but it warrants you having sight of it in terms of next year's audit. You'll see on page 191, we mentioned that we've got the ambition, as per the Welsh Government guidance, to sign off the accounts next year by the end of September, but that you in Powys are having a new finance system, and the current system won't be available after July 2026. So we're encouraging, I guess, a plan to be put in place so that we're able to get the accounts audited and done quickly, because obviously if we haven't got any system to look at, that's going to be incredibly difficult to get those accounts audited. So I would like to highlight that to the committee. As Dan has said, there's no uncorrected misstatements. Those statements that were corrected are in Appendix 3, or Appendix 2, sorry, which starts on page 200. So there was a couple which were in relation to prior year comparatives, and that's because the directorates changed, which meant that obviously you had to report slightly differently in this year, which would have impacted in 23-24 as well. There was an amendment to assets held for sale, where they didn't meet the criteria of assets held for sale. There was also some assets that had been disposed of, but they haven't been removed from the fixed asset register. So obviously that led to an amendment. There was some senior officer emoluments that needed to be disclosed that weren't originally disclosed. And then there was some information in relation to lease receivables. The other 3 that are noted there on page 201 and 202 are narratives, so I don't propose to go through those. And as Dan has said, we've made 2 recommendations. One, in relation to when you do implement the new finance system, we'd appreciate if there was some consideration about the coding structure, because at the moment, auditing some areas of the account can be quite complex. So it's whether there's a simpler way that could be done if the coding structure was slightly different. And I know we've had lots of discussions with Dan and the team about this, and as they've said in the management response, you know, they are looking into that and seeing what they can do. And then the second recommendation was in relation to the monitoring of the system administrator activity on those various systems, and saying that currently doesn't happen. And again, management have agreed to those recommendations. But I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you very much, Emma. I'll open the floor to committee members with any questions for Dan and or Emma. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Emma. It was just a bit of a comment, really. I was looking at the notes. Oh, excuse me. I think it's on page 69 in the pack. It's a note headed up risk, and there's two risks in there around climate emergency and nature emergency. And for me, it's quite right that you know, we do our bit and we try and do everything that we possibly can to address that. But I just wondered if it needed a bit of contextualizing, because even if we do everything, we're still heavily dependent upon what else happens in the wider world, because we could do everything but still not actually achieve that, and Paris could still be open to all the risks that are actually listed there. So I didn't know if that just needed a bit of contextualization, or if that's just something that doesn't happen in the accounts.
Thank you, Pete. Jane, did you want to come in on Councillor Pete's question?
Yeah, just on that one, I think the statement of accounts are referencing that risk, but you'll get much more detail and much more context by going to the risk register where that particular risk is set out. So I think in terms of what's included here, it's probably sufficient for the purpose of the statement of accounts, but you definitely have that more detail in the risk register.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jane. Understood.
Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Chris.
I was turning to, I think it's on page 61. There was some commentary regarding the council tax. There's some drop in the council tax level by, I think it was 0.46%. Was that within expectation, or is that causing a concern over the longer term? And I just wanted to make sure. It sounds low, but I just wanted to get confirmation.
Jane?
Shall I come in on that one? It is down. Of course, we consider any movement in that collection rate is absolutely fundamental to keep an eye on. It's something that's been seen across Wales, so it's not unique to Powys. We know that people are under pressure, and some of that does then manifest itself into what we're seeing here. We consider our collection rates as we set council tax base each year, so that is reviewed on an annual basis, as is the budget and what we expect to collect through council tax as well. In addition, though, we have looked at our debt recovery process, and I think we always urge residents to contact us should they have any issues, because there are things that they may be entitled to and so on and so forth. So absolutely fundamental to contact the council if anybody's experiencing difficulty, to discuss their options with us and whether they are entitled to any support. So yes, not unusual. We're managing it and we are constantly reviewing it.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Councillor Chris, for your question. Any further questions for Emma or Dan? Or indeed James, for that matter, on capital? If there are no further questions, I'd just like to pick up on Emma's drawing to the committee's attention the bringing forward the date for completion and sign off of accounts to September, to the end of September in 2026, and the coincident risk with the new finance system. Notwithstanding the fact that we know that under Jane's leadership and Anne's leadership, that the teams led by Dan and James work really hard and do a really good job to get these two sets of accounts over the line in a timely fashion. The twin risks of bringing the deadline forward by a month and the transition to a new system, and Emma's flagging up the need to look at the coding structure, that comes together potentially to present quite a bit of risk to our accounts for next year. Therefore, I would like to ask, and Jane to advise on timing of this, please. But I'd like to ask that an assurance paper with a high level outline project plan with key dates and deadlines comes to the committee in advance of work starting in earnest on the 25-26 accounts, so that the committee can be assured that everything is being done, time, cost, quality, risk management, to ensure that everything is being done in a collaborative way, and that both our team in Powys and Audit Wales are sufficiently resourced and focused on getting our two important sets of accounts over the line in a timely fashion by the end of September, given the additional risk that the system transfer will place. And this, I hope this will be helpful to the team, because it can be a very stressful time for the team as well. But if you've got a plan, at least you know what you're trying to do, and you can manage the plan, and the health and well-being of the team is as important. So hopefully this will be helpful going forward. But Jane to advise as to the timing for our receipt of such an assurance paper, please. Councillor Graham and Anne, and then I think we will need to move on to seek the committee's approval of these accounts.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a very quick one, and one of thanks really to the auditors for including the glossary of terms, which is extremely useful. And if we had that on all the reports that we received, life would be much easier. But thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Anne.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to confirm that we will be absolutely taking on board your point about the project plan. It is. We have a shape anyway, as you would imagine, because it's going to be so tight next year. So I think the expectation was to provide an update for you in January. That will give us the opportunity, but then opportunity to provide a further update. To help provide assurance. Just for note though, actually, when Emma talked about the deadlines with the old system and the new system transition, she's spot on with the deadlines and the dates. But actually, the information from this current year will all be entered into the new system. So hoping through audit queries and the like, we'll have time going through then. So your normal timetable, but we'll just be doing it out of the new system rather than the current system.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Right, Emma, last word.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to reiterate what I said before, really, in that, we work well together and we'll continue to do that, because it's going to be even more important next year than ever. So just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you very much, Emma. It is a point worth making. Thank you. So just to remind us all that we are being asked to approve for publication accounts that give the council an unqualified opinion, so are committee members content to approve? I'm looking for someone to proposed by John and seconded by Councillor Peake. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you to everyone involved, because this is often described as landing a jumbo jet on a postage stamp. So well done to everyone involved. I'll move us on
Do we
to...
need, sorry, Chair, do we need
Sorry,
a do we need a
do we
show
need to
of
vote?
hands?
Do we need
That's
to...
what I'm
Yeah, okay,
wondering.
sorry,
Carrie Ann will.
sorry, it's not just a proposer and a seconder, it's a show of hands.
Yes, please.
Yes, Carrie Ann, are we okay?
Yep. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, we're approved. Thank you. And thanks, Jane. I've lost my agenda. Right, we're moving on to agenda item 7, the annual governance statement. And Catherine James, if you could just introduce this briefly. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. So the annual governance statement is on page 219 of the document pack. So it just provides an overview and account of the effectiveness of the arrangements that the council does have in place in terms of the processes, systems and records, and ensures that we do meet our statutory obligations under the Local Government Elections Act. It provides assurance that if the council is exercising its functions effectively and using resources economically, efficiently and effectively, as well as continually strengthening governance. So behind the annual governance statement stands a comprehensive annual governance framework, and this is compiled by officers from every part of the organisation, and you can find that on page 249. So the framework does set out in detail the processes, systems and responsibilities across the organisation that underpin our commitment to transparency and continuous improvement. The annual governance statement is grounded in best practice from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, so CIPFA, and SOLIS, and it evaluates our performance against each of the 7 core principles of good governance. The assurance levels for principles A through to G were based upon information provided by officers, cabinet, corporate leadership, as well as valuable feedback from Governance and Audit Committee, as well as review by Audit Wales. And these assurance levels are tabled on page 230 through to 231. So Governance and Audit Committee have previously reviewed the document and provided feedback, and that was taken on board, and the revised AGS and supporting framework were endorsed at the July meeting. So today the committee are asked to approve the annual governance statement alongside the statement of accounts and pension fund accounts.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So we are asked to approve and recommend the adoption of this annual governance statement by the County Council. So following Catherine's helpful introduction, open to the floor for any questions. Councillor Peat.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Catherine, as well. I was looking at page 269 and 270 in the pack. And again, around the usual topic of whistleblowing. A1U just reinforces, first of all, the point we were making earlier, that the last time we've seen the annual report is January 2024. So if we do wait until July 26, that'll be 2.5 years. The other bit, I think the potential future improvement could do with a bit of beefing up, if I'm honest, because it was agreed that it would incorporate learning points and assurances that actions have been followed through with improvements. It was going to be more than just a table of numbers. So if committee would be happy with that, I'd be more than happy to help Catherine with some words. And then the one above around the whistleblowing policy, again, potential future improvement there. We were also going to make sure and agree that it should be made sure that the policy was actually aligned with the whistleblowing code as well. So again, I think there's some words I'd recommend that we add in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peat. Any further points on the annual governance statement from committee members or any further questions? John, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a general point. It's a point I've made before. What worries me about these reports is the sheer length of them, the cost of production of them, and whether they represent value for money, whether at the end of the day they're making that much difference. I personally, I would like to see, I've made this such a statement now several times over several years. I would personally like to see a study by Audit Wales of the requirements of Welsh Government on local authorities producing such documents to ensure that we are getting value for money. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm sure Audit Wales colleagues will note your concerns and your comments. Any further comments on the annual governance statement before I bring this section to a conclusion? So I'm going to, with Catherine's agreement, I'm going to suggest that that the committee approves and recommends the annual governance statement for adoption to the council, subject to Catherine and Councillor Pete agreeing some small drafting changes to the two areas around whistleblowing that Councillor Pete has just identified and drawn to the committee's attention. So if Catherine is content with that approach, I'll ask the committee to approve the annual governance statement. Catherine?
Yeah, happy with that. I will catch up with Councillor Lewington, and the amendments are to the framework that sits beneath the statement itself. So that's fine.
Yeah. Thanks, Catherine, for that, for picking me up on that. Thank you. Okay, so in if there are no further questions in the light of Catherine being agreeable to that, I would simply ask, is the committee content to approve? So Councillor Graham and Councillor Pete to propose and second, and can we have a show of hands? Carrie Ann, are we okay to say that we've approved?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you, Catherine, and your wider team for work on this. Moving on to agenda item 8 and agenda item 9, the pension fund accounts for 24-25. And Audit Wales's report on the same. So I'll ask Dan to introduce the pension fund accounts, and then I'll ask Emma to introduce Audit Wales's report, and then I'll take comments and questions from the committee. John, your hand is up. Was that a legacy hand or?
No, sorry, it's a legacy hand.
That's okay. That's okay.
Apologies.
Dan.
Yeah, thank you. As with the council accounts, I'm asking the committee to consider the enclosed letter of representation and the audited pension fund statement of accounts for 24-25. The pension fund accounts can be seen on pages 448 to 481 of the pack, and they form part of the pension fund annual report, which is to be published by the 1st of December 2025. The report is approved by the Pensions and Investment Committee. A date for that meeting is scheduled for the 27th of November. That committee were presented with a draft report at their meeting on the 3rd of September. Audit Wales audit the accounts and review the report to make sure it is consistent with their findings in the accounts audit. In relation to the accounts, the draft was signed by the Section 151 officer on the 9th of July. It was then circulated to members of this committee. The seminar was held on the 11th of July to highlight any changes from the previous year. And like the council accounts, on October the 16th, we met for a second seminar, which was held to review the Audit Wales Audit of Accounts report for the pension fund. The report highlights one uncorrected misstatement within the accounts, and we've included that in our letter of representation. This is in relation to an overstatement of a private equity value of £1.1 million. This was included in the accounts, and its inclusion included an opening balance from April 23 rather than April 2024, which was used in error. The amount falls below the materiality value of 8.6 million, and due to the nature of private equity valuations, where the unaudited figures can be subject to change. The impact of the overstatement will be picked up in next year's accounts. We do not feel this value would impact the view of the reader of the accounts. Again, we ask that the committee considers these accounts alongside the comments from Audit Wales in considering their recommendation. So again, I don't know if there's any questions or whether you're happy to pass over to Emma at this point.
Any immediate questions for Dan, or will we go to Emma and then take any comments or questions together at the end? Emma.
Thanks, Chair. As I highlighted, again, I just want to say thank you to Dan and his team, and also Tracy in relation to the pension accounts. As I said, with the main accounts, you know, if we didn't get that cooperation, then it would be a really difficult audit period. So thanks both. We do really appreciate it. Just like the main accounts, really, we're saying that there's an unqualified opinion, which is good from the council perspective. As Dan highlighted, there's one uncorrected misstatement which we need to bring to your attention, which Dan has eloquently put actually already, but it's on page 525 of the pack, and we don't consider that will have an impact on our opinion because, as Dan rightly said, our materiality level is 8.6 million. And the error that wasn't corrected is 1.1 million, which is a lot lower than materiality. So although we're bringing it to your attention, it doesn't have an impact on the opinion. So we can still provide that unqualified opinion. In terms of the audit risks and how that were there was the management override, which we didn't identify any instances of management override, and we didn't have any investments that were materially misstated. We made one correction in relation to additional voluntary contributions, and then there was the wrong sign had been put on investments where it should have been a positive figure and not a negative figure. But those are the only two amendments that were made to the accounts. So as you can see, really, from the work that we've undertaken, it was a really good set of accounts with limited adjustments, which is, again, is a good sign for the council. And in terms of the pension fund, we didn't make any recommendations, but I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thanks again to Dan. Any questions for Emma or Dan on the pension account? John, I can see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question really is surrounds the introductory letter from the Chair of the Pensions Committee, who describes the potential formation of an investment management company. I appreciate the investments already at arm's length, but this would actually place it at 2 arm's lengths. I also appreciate that this has gone through council already. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that I agree or disagree with the findings. It's a point of governance I'm going to make, which is really, should this impactful move have been gone through the audit committee at any stage?
Thank you, John. I'll just pick up Councillor Chris's question as well, and then we can round up all the questions together. Councillor Chris? I think you're still on mute, Councillor.
Yeah, switching screens, Chair.
Got you.
I'm on what page is it? 500 on and it's talks about retirements in 24-25. I see early retirements is quite significantly high. One is, what is an early retirement to normal retirement, and does that pose any challenges to the organisation with people going early and retiring.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. I'll ask Jane to pick up the governance point that John Brottingham made. But Jane, would you also can you also pick up Chris's? Yeah, thank you, Jane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the establishment of an investment management company, there's been changes at a UK level and changes in legislation which have seen those changes come into the fore for the Wales Pension Partnership. We have worked in collaboration across Wales and the 8 funds for many years, and as one of the smallest funds in Wales, we definitely gain significantly from being in that collaboration, or have done already across the years. You know, being able to pool assets, you can maximise returns from bigger investments, but also it helps us share fees and limit those fees as well. So we've seen those benefits. I think this will just be an extension of that. It won't move it one step away. It will replace what we already have in place. So I just wanted to give that assurance that it doesn't remove us any further. And we still, as a pension and investment committee, very much hold the reins in terms of our strategy, our responsible investment strategy, and all of those things are dictated by us. And the company will have to fulfill our requirements in terms of where those investments go. Sign off for those decisions were very much required through the Pension and Investment Committee itself, but also it's a council decision. And we sought guidance from our legal advisors to make sure that we got that governance right. And in terms of what we did with that, there was no need for that to come through Governance and Audit Committee as part of that governance. Clive is here. If you want somebody from an independent perspective to state that, obviously Clive is here.
I'm quite happy with what you said, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, John, and thank you for clarifying that, Jane. It's appreciated. Thank you.
From an early retirement, people do choose to retire early. They make that decision based on the impact that has to them as an individual in terms of what they receive. It's usually, well, it is at a reduced rate if you choose to take your retirement early. That falls basically on the individual. There is no impact on the council from a financial perspective. That being said, when people leave, obviously that does have an impact on the council, particularly when you've got people in perhaps key posts taking early retirement, and planning and workforce plans have to consider that to make sure that we're minded to those potential changes, particularly with the demographic of our workforce, with quite a substantial amount of our employees above 50. So, you know, they become entitled to that option at 55. So yes, clearly something, it can have an impact from that perspective, but workforce planning and being minded of it and working to that and developing people up through the organisation helps us mitigate some of that risk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Breeze, Councillor Graham, I can see your hand is up.
Yes, just a very quick question. Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at contributions received by employers and employees, and we've got a column there where employers normal and employers additional, and there are two figures that stand out there. You know, Powys County Council's additional is 2.5 million, while Wellsville Town Council has a figure of 9,800 there. Could someone explain to me what those are?
Dan?
Yeah, just finding the mute button. Yeah, so the additional contributions are deficits run up over a number of years, I suppose, looking at benefits going forward, whereas the normal contributions are contributions that the employer serves based on the future service rate of current membership.
Okay, I think I understand the Wellsville one, but the Powys one is rather high, is it?
Yeah, so Powys is the largest employer in the pension fund, so obviously that's reflected, and it is the largest by some considerable margin.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Councillor Breeze, for your question. Any further points or questions on the pension fund account for 24-25? Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at page 501. I just wonder if somebody could explain that to me. It's probably something I'm missing, but I don't quite understand. Like let's say, for instance, we've got cost per member at the top, 396. Where does that figure come from? I can see a 396.15 at the bottom, but I can't really work out where it relates to. Does that make sense? Please.
Thank you, Councillor Danny, and also I should have said earlier, welcome to your first meeting with us.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for that oversight.
No worries.
Dan,
Yeah,
can you help us out, please?
Well, I might have to look at this further, but this table really is included in the report. It isn't really scrutinised, I suppose, or should be. It isn't in the accounts of the pension fund, which we're here to approve today. But yeah, as you can see, there's various different expenses here: the administration, investment manager expenses, and the oversight and governance costs. That total cost per member should be an amalgamation of all those three costs divided by the number of the membership into the pension fund, the number of members of the fund.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, sorry if I'm asking silly questions. I'm just trying to find my feet, really, but it's my first meeting. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Danny.
Yeah, so it'll be the three added up, the three sub costs per membership that you can see in the table above.
Just picking up, Councillor Danny, and apologies for not welcoming you to your first meeting earlier, but also we in this committee we tend to adopt the approach that there are no silly questions. So please don't ever apologise for asking a question in this committee. Curiosity is the main skill required for membership of a governance and audit committee. So all questions are relevant and welcomed. And Jane, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, just to say, these figures are included for transparency and accountability. So these show the cost of us administrating the funds across the number of members that are in the fund. And I think it's one of the national indicators that we look at when we're looking at performance of funds and the administration aspect as well. So that's what it is showing you. It's showing you that those total costs on an annual basis, when you factor in the number of members that we have, it comes out at that annual cost per member. And I know there is data that shows that across many funds, so we can look at that as a comparator.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Danny, for your question. Thanks, Jane and Dan. Any further questions, or I will move forward to seek the committee's approval of the pension fund accounts. There are no further questions. Can I seek approval for publication from Governance and Audit Committee for the 2024-5 pension fund account? Councillor Chris, John, show of hands. Carrie-Anne, are we okay?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to Dan and team, and to Emma and her team for the thoroughness and diligence of their work on these unqualified pension accounts. Thank you very much for that. Moving us on to agenda item 10, and back to Catherine for the draft annual corporate self-assessment report. Catherine, if you could just briefly introduce the draft annual corporate self-assessment, and then we'll invite questions and comments from committee members.
you. So the draft annual self-assessment report, it's a bit of a mouthful, is on page 549 of the pack, and this provides an overview of the council's performance against its corporate and strategic equality plan, often known as the CSEP, and it's looking at the 3 wellbeing objectives within that for the financial year 2024-25, so last year. It reflects on progress made, challenges encountered, and the effectiveness of our governance arrangements. It ensures we are complying with many of the statutory duties, particularly the Local Government and Elections Act, the Wellbeing and Future Generations Wales Act, as well as the Equality Act. The self-assessment evaluates each of our 3 wellbeing objectives through the lens of sustainable development, ensuring long-term thinking, meaningful involvement, proactive prevention, as well as integration and collaboration. It draws on feedback from regulators, staff, the people of Powys, as well as partners, and assesses how we are working towards meeting our objectives using the Future Generations Commissioner's Journey Checker, which is sort of defined and outlined in the document itself. So it was identified that objective 1, which is we will improve people's awareness of services and how to access them so that they can make informed choices. We were being more adventurous. So this means we're stepping out of that business as usual mindset and acting to change how things are currently done. For objective 2, which is around good quality sustainable employment and providing training opportunities and pursuing real living wage accreditation, we were owning our ambition. So this is similar to being more adventurous, but some initiatives involve more people being involved, and it's about taking well-managed risks and reaching out to other sectors and collaborating with others. Objective 3 was around we will work to tackle poverty and inequality to support the well-being of people in Powys. And so for this one, it was rated as owning our ambition / leading the way. So similar to what I've just described, but also we may be the first people or organisation to take some of these actions, and we are a guide for others to follow. So our self-assessment also includes the council's equality monitoring and demonstrates our contributions to the 7 wellbeing goals. We'll be publishing an executive summary of the report to ensure that we can reach as many people as possible. And it would also be promoted through social media and on our website in both English and Welsh. And I'd just like to thank the committee for their review and feedback, and now seek formal endorsement ahead of it going to Cabinet on the 18th of November for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. And I think the executive summary point and sort of communicating it to the people in Powys through kind of easy to understand, accessible means when people may not have a lot of time to review such a detailed document is extremely welcome. So thank you for that. I'll open the floor to comments and questions. I'm pausing. Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for that, Catherine. It's good to see the linkage between the high-level corporate aims and translating into these more tangible corporate objectives. What I would ask about is the link then to the integrated business planning process, whereby the funding towards delivering these outcomes and the measurable outputs that add up to create these outcomes. Is there an explicit linkage between this? And is this something that we can do to, looking at Jane, to help with the integrated business planning process, which is now going to be over 5 years?
Thanks very much, Gareth. And I can see Councillor Jake, leader, wants to come in on this point as well. So in which order would you like to come in, Jane? And
the
the
leader
first.
always first.
Right, okay. I'll go to the leader first and then Jane can come in after that.
So polite, Jane. Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing me in. You're absolutely right, Gareth. Here, so one of the things that we describe is the golden thread, and of course that starts with the CSEP, and it goes right through the integrated business plans to ensure that service areas wrap funds around the ambitions that we have and turn them into actions, and then to ensure that we get delivery around that. We get buy-in from staff. That drills all the way down to service plans and then individual people plans. So by that I mean the annual appraisals and 6 months appraisals individuals have to see themselves against the targets, and for them to be able to describe what they're doing on the ground against some of these broader ambitions, to really give some granularity to it, to put colour to the picture. So absolutely, it weaves all the way through. So you're right to indicate the next step in this thread is through those integrated business plans.
Oh, thanks. Good to hear.
Thank you very much, Leader, for those assurances. It's very much appreciated, as is your attendance here today. Thank you. Jane, do you have anything to add?
I mean, most of what I was going to say, the leader has already said. The only things I would add, and just from an audit committee perspective as well, we've talked a lot about risk today. Services assess that risk. Any actions that they need to take are also included in their integrated business plans, workforce plans, financial plans. It all sits together in those integrated business plans, really making sure at a service perspective they've got everything covered. So we've done a lot of work for many years on these, and I think they're improving year on year. And services, we had a session now last week where we were just reinforcing the need for some of that, and those IBPs are being refreshed now for up to the end of December in readiness for next year.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Thank you, Gareth, for the question. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I find it a really helpful document for me personally. I mean, particularly when you've got the demographic statistics within it, because you can see that there's approximately 26,000 people with disabilities. The material aspect of deprivation is in on there, and you can actually work out what that looks like. Also, I think it's on page 611, there is a graphic which shows how we spend money. So for every £100 where it actually goes for communication with the residents that we serve, that I think is really helpful to have. So compliments on it. I think it's helpful. In some ways, I think it would be nice if we could shrink it down to make it a little bit more user friendly for the public, because that may be more helpful. I don't know whether they would go through all of the detail as a part of that on there, but I think it's a progress and it's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader?
Yes, sorry, I don't want to prolong your afternoon, but I mean, Councillor Chris raises a really good point then. We've identified, and you have as well, haven't you, about having a summary, and Catherine's identified the fact that we need to put some very clear comms around some of the messaging. And one of the pieces of comms that has been rolling for a period now and will carry on right through into the spring is clarification about just what we do as an organisation, because Councillor Chris, you're right about that infographic, aren't you, about where the spend goes for the £100, and that's key. But within some of those big numbers, people don't know necessarily what those service areas provide and offer. And Catherine's team through the comms is trying to explain some of that, to really give a reveal around some of those spend areas, because as you say, there's some very big numbers there, but there's some small numbers that do an awful lot. lot that we're not familiar with. So the more we do on that, the better for the public. So I don't think it's just a matter of dampening this down. I think it's actually ballooning out some of the comms and the explanation that we do, and the simple infographics are very useful. And like you, when you look at the average age of the people in Powys at, I think it's 50 in there. Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but we must be about the oldest county in Wales if we're not there yet. So, when you start to measure that against the sorts of things we do, it's really powerful, isn't it, Chris? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and Catherine for that. On the basis of that discussion and your reading of the self-assessment, are committee members content to endorse the draft annual corporate self-assessment report for 24-25? I have a show of hands. Everyone's content. We're okay with that, Carrie-Anne?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you very much to Catherine and our team for producing the report and for all the hard work that goes into that. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are on 15:35. I'm going to suggest we have a 5-minute comfort break and come back together just after 20 to 4 for the risk deep dive and the working group consideration. Everyone content with that? So 5-6 minutes comfort break. Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. We're back live and recording, colleagues. I'm going to invite Daniel Burgess to lead us through a risk deep dive. I think Daniel, you've provided us with a very helpful presentation. If you would like to talk to the presentation and introduce the deep dive, and then we'll move to questions and discussion with the committee.
Great.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you as well for the opportunity to speak today. So yes, as you're aware, the risk assessment R0011, the climate emergency. A climate emergency has been declared by Powys County Council. If we experience the extreme consequences of not taking action, then we will experience flooding, poor air quality, impact on nature and our communities. So moving on from that, the inherent risk is severe at 25, with the residual risk severe at 20. So what does that actually mean in reality? So what in terms of the risk to us here, the citizens of Powys, there's numerous obvious issues we're aware of around exceeding acceptable CO2 emissions, unable to meet demand for housing linked to land suitability, flood alleviation, increased phosphates, for example, due to extreme weather events, deteriorating river and water quality, and risks to the people and the economic climate related failure of the power system. So everything from right through from our water, our energy, our transport is all at risk of climate change. So the controls and actions we've decided to introduce to tackle this essentially. So we have a dedicated support to deliver a route map to net zero, which is a costed route map. What does it actually mean for us as a local authority to get to net zero, and how could that be achieved? Workstream actions plans have been developed. Significant funding has been received via grants, both from UK government and Welsh government, to help address that and deliver some benefits. The carbon accounts reporting, have we actually scratched the surface of that carbon account reporting? Is there more we could be looking at information to gather on for example, how us as a local authority secure our energy? Have we actually understood where our energy is coming from? What percentage of that energy is renewable? Engaging with stakeholders and experts to understand how they can help us with this transition. And with the Climate Nature Programme plan, bringing politicians, experts and officials together to really identify those three key ways forward. And Climate Essentials e-learning modules, which I'll come into shortly. So in terms of potential future mitigation, obviously, as I think it's been mentioned already today, some of the elements are out of our control, but what is within our control, we should actually do everything within our powers to address that. So some of the discussions we've been having and working through with officials is actually in terms of other service areas and the risks that climate change can have to their service areas, whether that's adult services, HTR, for example. There's need understanding how they can work, not only to tackle those risks to their service areas, but also to mitigate those risks as well. And then regular meetings are held with external stakeholders to review action plans. So obviously emergency planning is something we do a lot of, and understanding the risks from the future of climate change modelling around rainfall, for example. What may be currently a 100-year event is forecast to becoming far more frequent than that. And the route map to net zero will evidence our commitment to that and actually how that will be implemented. So, in terms of developing the route map, we've got someone in post at the moment working with us on that, helping cost that out and bring the teams into play. And the review has engaged staff and regional colleagues representing most work streams. So everyone, procurement, fleet, property, etc., they've all been engaged at a director level to understand how that can be implemented and how the costed route map will work. And the expert we've brought in has had significant access to all our key reports on that. So if we consider the review of the current situation, good carbon performance data and long-term program development in many service areas, but some additional work is needed. So essentially we are doing a very good job in understanding where our issues are around our carbon's performance and what's being done. Our current trajectory with the work that we're doing currently, with the programs we've introduced, will lead to a reduction. Governance structure and active engagement from many enthusiastic, knowledgeable and motivated staff has taken place. I'm really pleased to say we've had some really positive reactions, because if we're honest, tackling climate change can also lead to financial efficiencies also. Widening ownership of the risk is something that's relevant to that. Many work streams, they're obviously very busy day in, day out. Bringing that awareness of the tackling climate change to them is fundamental. And again, the successful bids for project-based grant funding will help to deliver that. So there's a lot to celebrate. We're doing a lot of good work, but I think what we do need to now is just keep the pace going, essentially. One area we are keen to undertake further scrutiny of is procurement. By far, the supply chain is our biggest source of emissions as a local authority. How can we tackle that? What can we do to actually address those issues? So let's develop a long-term decarbonisation investment programme for Powys County Council, and let's leverage in where we can appropriately those assets that we have in place, develop good practice case studies and showcase wider community benefits. One measure we've already implemented on the back of the report starting is actually carbon literacy training. Carbon literacy training by a workforce shows a natural progression to a 5 to 15% reductions in emissions purely by nudging behaviours in that direction. So again, that's something we've already taken into place, and staff are receiving that training. So that was a whistle-stop tour of the programme. I'm just conscious of time, so I don't want to spend too long going through the slides that you've already had, but I will open the floor up to any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and colleagues have had the slides, so hopefully they've been given some thought to the direction of their questioning. So I can see John's hand is up, and then Councillor Pete.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for this presentation. Very welcome presentation. One word that's missing in all this, though, is cost. And what is the likely what work have we done to establishing what the costs are going forward, and in line with that, its affordability.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Charlton.
Not a councillor. I'm
sorry. Just checking.
Just a humble lay member.
Yeah. So just checking with Councillor Charlton. Would you like me to answer that one, or are you happy to answer?
Sorry, Councillor Jackie. I should have welcomed you as cabinet member already. Sorry, apologies. I went straight to Daniel and didn't bring you into the meeting.
That's fine. I'm very happy for Daniel to answer the question around the finances, but if I think he's missed anything, then I might ask just to come back in on that.
Of course, you'll be very welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. Yes, it's actually a really interesting question, and what has been eye-opening for us in terms of the actual supply chain, that contract management and the procurement. Actually, by tackling climate change and looking at how we're recording those emissions, it does actually leads to savings anyway. So actually, this is not only is it tackling climate change, it's actually looking at efficiencies in our contract management. So something we're working very closely with our procurement team on to understand how we can align that tackling that climate change with that better contract management. So the evidence which will be presented in the final costed route map will actually show how those savings will be delivering carbon savings also. So what there's obviously you can say, well, it costs £400 million to go to EV fleet. Yes, that is correct as an example, but that would be a straight transition from a stop-start. So actually looking at how we do that over a period of time, understand how we can manage those contracts that we're issuing to really get down to recording those carbon savings that are already being made that we aren't currently capturing as part of our carbon accounts. So this not only is this tackling climate change, it's actually looking at how we can procure more efficiently.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I'll go to Councillor Pete and then to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Jackie, did you want to come in on the back of Daniel's answer there?
Yeah, yes, just to say to John, and in response to his concern about the cost on this, it is a concern to us as well, John. It is something that we constantly discuss. We cannot deliver what we need to deliver through the county council's funds alone. It's not going to happen, but we can plan for things like fleet transition, which is what we're doing. And as Dan has said, the procurement process is incredibly important, because not only does that help us to cut our carbon emissions, it also helps the people who we are contracting to consider that as well. So we're trying to sort of go out globally as well as stay within our own means here. But also my concern has been all the way along is that it isn't just our job to do this. We have to share this out with everybody. So what we've looked at and the way that we've planned this in our strategic approach is, where else can we go for funding to help us to achieve our goals, but also to help others to achieve their goals as well? So we've looked very much at what we can do around green growth, how we can work with partners, how we can capitalise on any funding that we have to go out for match funding. So it's not just about what we're spending, it's about what we can do around us across Wales, and where we can go for assistance and help in making sure that we can reach that net zero figure. Whether it's 2025 or not is a different question, but really we need to get to that net zero figure ourselves. So that's just an addition to what Dan said, but a more of a strategic approach.
Thank you, Councillor Jackie. John, come back in if you want.
Yes, short supplementary, if I may. Will you be making any specific provisions in the upcoming budget for this item?
Councillor Charlton, do you want to come back on that question?
No, I'll leave that to you, Dan, because that's you've got some better information than I have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in terms of the provisions towards this work, what we're actually doing is just understanding the roles of some of the officials and how we can link some of this work more efficiently between different teams. So that rather than silos, saying, for example, working on purely on the climate change, actually, how can those skills and those contacts be made within the existing network? So it's actually about working smarter across the organisation.
So we won't be seeing any specific numbers in the budget there which relate to net zero.
I think Diane might want to come back on that one.
Diane, is Diane in the room? Oh, yeah. Diane's there. Diane, I can see. Sorry, you were hiding up in the corner of my screen, Diane.
Oh, thank you, Chair. And I think it's very hard to answer John's question in a very specific line, because obviously there are a multitude of elements where you are actually meeting the challenge of climate action, but actually are then embedded in other costs as well. So it might be that you're looking at your commissioning of a service or recommissioning a service, but actually within that service you're asking for those providers to help us address the net zero challenge. So the multiple kind of area of all of our emissions is in services we commission. That's where the greatest part is. So that would be in every single service area's line. So they've probably made provision in it in terms of increased costs, etc. But you wouldn't specifically see a line within the budget that says we're going to spend this much on climate action. And it will be, again, against each service area to assess what's affordable, what makes them more efficient, what actually makes them and deliverable within their services scope. So I think we're asking for a kind of like an overarching golden number or visibility there that's just not possible, because it's in really climate and nature is across stronger, fairer, greener plan in everything we do. So it's going to be there and it's in everything within the budget.
Okay, I'll leave it there, but we'll be returning to it, I'm sure, many occasions going forward. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Diane, and thank you, Daniel and Councillor Jackie. I'm going to go to Councillor Pete and then I'll go to Gareth Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for the presentation, Daniel. I just had two quick comments, if I may. Is the first one, the risk always reads to me as if it's something that we can achieve on our own, and if we do our bit, everything's going to be wonderful. And I think it's back to that point I was raising when we were chatting about the accounts earlier on. I'd just like to see some sort of contextualization around it, which is, yes, we do our bit, and it's dead right. We should do our bit, but even then, even if we do all of that, we're still at risk that other countries don't do their bit. And I think that message just needs, or that context just needs to be given, or else people will think everything's going to be okay if Paris does its bit. I hope that one makes sense. Secondly, then I was just listening to John as well there in Diane's response, and I think I too would be sort of very interested in understanding some of the financials around this. I think if we sort of say, if I understood Diane correct, that this is we can't get it those numbers because they're all in other figures over there. I'm just slightly worried we could be spending an absolute fortune on this, and we don't actually know how much it is. I would guess at least somewhere we have a handle on the cost side of it, even if we haven't got a handle yet on the benefits side and how much we're saving there. So is there at least a little compromise that we could start trying to pull out some of those figures around the costs? Because again, if I was running a service trying to look at savings, I would know, well, if I haven't got 10 pens, that's saved me that. If I haven't got 10 pencils, it's saved me something else. So is there some sort of compromise that we could begin to see some figures to bring this alive, please? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pete, rather than continue the kind of financial implications conversation here, because I suspect we won't resolve it today, are you content if I ask Diane and Jane with their teams to take this, how do we score within the budget and within the accounts? How do we score the investment and the expenditure that we make on costs attributable to responding to the climate change emergency? If I ask senior officials with relevant elected members to consider that and perhaps come back to us in the context of a budgetary discussion going forward.
Yes, I'll be happy with that, Chair.
Jane,
Yeah.
Diane, is that okay? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And thanks for your points, John and Councillor Pete, because they are important points, and I do think it is worth having some sense of costs benefits to summarise. But if that can be recorded as a formal action point as well, carry on. I'll go to Gareth Hall.
Thanks, Chair. And 2 points to make, and one follows on from what you just said, is that if we do this right, a lot of this can be delivered through the mainstream activities of service areas acting in a joined up way. So as part of that scoring you referred to, should we be having a set of performance measures that can be claimed against this? So it's not about officers focusing on the money, but what the money and their activities deliver in terms of outputs. So if we could add that on as well to those terms of reference you outlined, that would be great. The second thing is that I don't think there's a local authority in Wales that hasn't declared a climate emergency. So there's an awful lot of effort going on amongst the 20 odd local authorities and the Welsh Government. We've talked a lot, quite rightly, about joining up within the council and joining with partners. But is there some form of exchange of best practice or benchmarking so that to avoid duplication? Because an awful lot of money is spent in a very tight budgetary environment, all with the similar ambitions.
Thanks, Gareth.
Sorry, I can't see Councillor Charlton's got a hand up a lot.
Daniel, what I think I'll do, because Councillor Danny and Councillor Chris want to come in. If I'll ask other members to come in, and then we can maybe come back to you to kind of consider some of the questions as a bundle. Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My points have really been covered. What I was going to raise was, again, this may be me trying to make sense of the document being new. That I really what I'm missing is milestones in this. We don't seem to have anything to track any progress at all. But then we've veered off onto the finance side of things, which I hadn't really thought about. But that also ties into, let's say, value for money, if you like. I can't think of a better phrase. But that's, yeah, so we're all on the same page, really. So like I say, it had been mentioned just before. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Danny. And I guess the objectives and key performance indicators takes us back to the conversation we had with Audit Wales earlier around smart objectives. And knowing what you're buying, why you're buying it, and the impact it's going to have both in performance and on net zero and other factors. Councillor Chris?
Yeah, I'm just going to build on it. I mean, I think some of this we've already got posts in position. I mean, it's mentioned that there is this net zero development manager on a question on the slide is that person was actually appointed in July 25, working part-time up until late 25. Does that mean that that person then is going to finish at the end of 25, or is that different on there? You may not be able to answer that today at this meeting, but that would be helpful to know. Is this grant funding on there, or is this without existing resources? And then, as it's been rightfully said, we can't do this in isolation. So we have other colleagues that we're engaging in with other activities around a sustainable powers agenda. So with our town council colleagues, are we engaging with them within this same process? So it becomes a part of a co-production model moving forward, because that's the only way you can actually do that. And then that means then as we are developing resilient communities, net zero gets built into that ethos of that local community. So for example, you have people looking at recycling activities in a different way, and how they dispose of food waste, for example, through different aerobic opportunities. Coming back to monies, I think that's always an important point, and I don't think you can avoid it. But we need to tie this into benefits and a benefits realization. And I was mentioned in the previous agenda item about the infographic to say how we spend £100 of someone's money. Is there any way that we could look at that as an example and say, within our schools budget, how much of that is towards a net zero benefit? Within the social care aspect, is there anything around that it may be that staff are using electric cars where they weren't using so it's those on the, and again with those other sections on the but to me we need an evidence base, and we need to start collecting it, because that's how we will demonstrate to the public how this is moving forward. And then finally, I think training in this area and awareness of what it looks like would be helpful, and that's how you could engage with the wider partnership and collaboration, in my view. We'll stop there, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So what occurred to me when you were talking about specific service area budgets and demonstrating that they were supporting this agenda? So you mentioned EVs. So would something like solar panels on school roofs come into that kind of sphere?
And that builds into the transforming schools agenda. So on the, how are we linking some of those strategies that we're already doing to become more efficient, and that on the along the way, and giving us that benefit?
I think I'm following. I'm following your thinking. Yeah. Councillor Jackie.
Thank you. And thank you for those really perceptive questions. And I'm sure they've come out because of the great presentation that Dan has given as well. But some of the things I wanted to come back on, if I come back to Gareth's question first about partnership and joined up working, and I think it was specifically you were asking the question around the 22 authorities and how we work together. And actually the way we do work together is through the Welsh Local Government Association. There's a huge amount of support through the Welsh Local Government Association, and we all interact with that. And my role on the Welsh Local Government Association is the climate spokesperson. So I actually have quite a lot of information gathering, but they also do a lot of training, and I know that's well attended by most local authorities, not all of them, but those who are really keen to push the net zero agenda certainly do attend that training, and that's fed back to officers, and we share that as much as we possibly can. We can't share everything, and sometimes we're sharing information and sending out information, and it's heard once, and we need to keep on repeating that information out, because people tend to forget, they've got busy lives and they move on. Coming to Councillor Pete's question about risk and the risk that we're doing our little bit but others aren't. You're quite right, that's always a risk, but I don't think we can ignore what we can do, and I think we do have to press forward on what we're doing. And one of the ways that we have actually moved forward a lot, I think, in this authority is to look at the risk as being everybody's risk. It's not my risk, it comes under my name. It's not my risk, it's not Dan's risk, it's not Diane's risk, it's not the risk of our corporate leadership team, it's everybody's risk. And we're putting that across now, I think, to our heads of services, but also down amongst our officers as well. And we do have a really, really good green network, which is for anybody really, but there's a lot of general staff are actually part of that green network, and they share information, they share ideas. I read it on a regular basis because there's some really interesting stuff that comes forward there. So I think we take it seriously on an individual basis, and that's the way we have to look at it, and that will impact on that global basis, I think, as we go forward. And there's lots of work going on there as well. Danny, when you were talking about milestones, we've got a route map. And that links into what Councillor Chris was talking about was, what about that officer that we've brought in? What about that person? Dan can give you specifics on the cost of that, but we've brought that officer in. He's a very knowledgeable, very experienced officer around climate change, and he has been looking at our route map, which links into an annual report that we do. We do now have a climate and nature emergency annual report. I'm thinking of giving it a slightly different twist on the name soon, but we can talk about that one later. But that actually does demonstrate the progress that we're making. But the route map will be absolutely key to saying what the costs are, what the risks are, who can develop that, who can deliver it, what it means to procurement, what it means to our services, what it means to social workers, what it means to the delivery of social care. All of those things will be built into that route map, and that will be published very, very soon. And I'm hoping that's going to a scrutiny committee as well, so that that all can be assessed. And the cost benefit analysis, absolutely. It's something that I've been very keen to work on. It takes a long time to start building that up, but I think the route map is beginning to help us do that. I think I've covered everything there, but if there is anything that I've forgotten, then I'm sure Dan will be able to come in, and I'm sure, Chair, you'll be able to ask me some further questions if needed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackie, and thanks, Dan, colleagues, for your questions. My impression and what I'm hearing, and my focus when I was reading the presentation was on the slide, the controls and actions slide, and the route map slide that Councillor Jackie has just been drawing our attention to. And on the basis of what Councillor Jackie has been saying, it feels to me that, and reflecting back in our earlier conversation about smart objectives and really targeted KPIs and smart objectives, and the way we were talking with Audit Wales and the risk report, if we can develop, and you may have these developed in much finer detail than is on these slides, and that's great if you do, and if you don't, I would encourage you to have it. But linking the controls and actions and the route map and developing very, very detailed smart objectives with clear costs and benefits would start to build up that much more detailed, granular evidence base as to precisely what we were doing, how, for whom, and when, and the impact that it was having to mitigate this risk. What I'm hearing is that all of the building blocks and the absolute commitment is there. It feels to me as a bit more analytics and a bit more metrics and analytics would really help to demonstrate the work that's been done to mitigate this risk, and to progress to the opportunity of net zero. I'm picking up on messages that colleagues have really been reminding us throughout this meeting. We need to think about risks, but we also need to think about opportunities. So I'm going to try to bring this item to a close, and thank Councillor Jackie and Daniel for leading us through this deep dive conversation. I'd like to come back to this again in a few months' time and perhaps focus down more on controls and actions and specific smarts around that, because I think that way the committee will begin to really understand more of the costs and benefits. But it feels to me that there's the foundations of very well, not just foundations, but foundations and real action of very good work, and picking up the Pan Wales work that Councillor Jackie's doing and the shared learning that can be derived from that. I will pause there. I will give the very last word on this agenda item to Diane.
Thank you, Chair. And I welcome your summary there. I just want to point out that there is a climate and nature member steering group looking at this in the complete round that meets on a very regular basis and does get into all of that detail and is on all of the working groups with officers working up the detailed action plans that do have SMART objectives and key performance indicators embedded with them. But it is a moving factor, isn't it, in terms of what we can do, what's within our grasp in the short and medium term and long term. And some of those plans are still being developed. The shorter term ones are there, the medium term ones are still being developed, and there are still opportunities that we might not even have thought of that are coming up in the long term. So having a complete picture of all of that at one single point in time is nearly impossible.
Absolutely.
But I kind of think about the member steering group and their role and their interaction with the audit committee. So that maybe that's something we can pick up offline and how that can work together. Chair, thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks very much, Diane, for those final comments, and thanks again to everyone involved in helping us through that deep dive. It was really instructive, and it provides even more food for thought. I can see Councillor Danny's going to have to leave, so thank you very much, Councillor Danny, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll move us on to agenda item 12, which is our regular update on our working groups. For this meeting, we're going to devote this particular item to the capital working group and the draft paper that's been provided. And I'll hand over to Gareth, who chairs our capital working group, to explain the background to the paper and the working group's intentions for it. Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the working group was resurrected earlier this summer, and it was timely that the council went out for consultation on policy on the farm estate. And so initially we were looking at commenting on that, but then it widened into the broader remit of the GAC, which is to review and scrutinise the council's financial affairs. So we looked at this a draft policy in the context of the budgetary situation. But again, we're also mindful that as a group, we're not here to make policy. We're here to see that the governance and robust processes are in place. And one of the things that came immediately to mind about the consultation process were that there was, which are highlighted in the paper, there are some gaps in the evidence base, particularly around the success or otherwise of tenancies and the fundamental objective of the estate, which is a stepping stone for young people to get a career, get their foot onto the farming ladder. So we saw the need to get more evidence together to make better decisions. And so what we believe is that this draft policy would provide, together with the additional evidence base that we've asked to be identified, that would provide a very comprehensive set of criteria for future decisions to be made on the farm estate. And this is not just confined to potential future disposals, but to how the estate is managed going forward and the diversification of the estate, all of which is outlined in the consultation document. So what we've set out in this paper is what we believe is a framework utilising the good work that's gone on in devising the new policy, to have that to move away from what has currently been a reactive approach to the management and disposals of the estate to one which is much more strategic. And this chimes, I believe, with the move to from just an annual budgeting approach to one of a 5-year approach. And again, very mindful as a group that we started out as a capital working group is the timescale for investing in new assets, particularly around schools, which the Audit Wales has said should have at least a 15-year time horizon. And I know that there are some tenancies on the farm estate which are 5 years, more historic ones 10 years, and I think legacy ones even longer. So what this paper is propose a report to the Cabinet to outline what we believe to be a robust framework for making decisions, particularly around future disposals. And that's anything on a continuum from do nothing to wholesale disposal. Not that that's on the agenda, but that shows we think that combining the increased evidence base and the criteria in this and a more strategic approach over that longer term timescale would make for much better decision making.
Thank you very much, Gareth. So with the committee's agreement, the intention, if the committee is content to sign off this report, that we would submit the report and it would go to scrutiny and ultimately to the Cabinet when the correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, Kath and Carrie Ann, but this report would go forward to scrutiny and Cabinet when the report from the estates team on the consultation exercise goes to Cabinet as well. It would go forward as part of the evidence base to inform Cabinet deliberations going forward. But obviously if it goes forward as a Governance and Audit Committee report, this meeting needs to be content with that. Councillor Jake, I can see your hands up.
Yeah, can I say I don't think that would be a very helpful route. I really welcome the report, and Gareth, if you're the principal author, then many thanks for bringing this together. As you probably gather, the council has got a strategic approach to the release of assets and had the £10 million a year target that you've alluded to there.
Yeah.
And full council was very clear in suggesting that they were unhappy about that and wished to not progress on that basis until there had been a review of the farm estate policy which we've been seeking to take forward. So there is a broad strategic context, of course, not specifically outlining the farm estate, but anybody who recognises all of the hundreds of assets that the council has, totalling something like 400 odd million pounds, it would have to include a proportion of the farm estate within that. And what I would quite like to do, so just to give you an indication of where we are now, because you won't be necessarily up to speed with this, we have carried out the consultation that we had. That closed, I think, on the Sunday the 12th of October. We've had a fairly disappointing volume of responses. I think from memory it was about 72 individual responses, which range across the farming sector, farming unions, farming tenants, and members of the general public. And when you bear in mind we've got 68 members on council, many of whom were displeased with where we were heading in relation to the farm estate, I'm a little surprised there weren't more individual responses airing a range of views on that. But what I will say is that the quality of responses was good. There was a lot of detail, and I'm pleased with that. Most of it was from within the sector. as I've indicated, and therefore you'd expect it to be quite intelligent and well considered. And what I want to do, I've asked officers to, I've already seen a summary of that. There's a high-level summary, and I've asked officers to, before the end of this week, to write out now to the farm unions again and the tenants association. So the 3 farm unions and the association of our tenants, who I only met recently. I've met them all a couple of times since I've been in this role, and send back to them the that high-level response, and to timetable meetings so that we can, around the table, have a discussion about how we take that forward. And I would like the chair and vice chair, one or both of those, with me in that round table discussion with those parties. Separately or together, I don't mind, but to get to some meaningful place. And what I'd like to do, Gareth, is to put your paper into that mix. So it becomes a live document, a live consideration as we go through the review of the policy, because I think there are some fair things you say about my introduction, for instance, and how some of the things I was being quoted may well have gone into an early iteration. I think you understand why I kept my powder dry in respect of that, because I wanted to shape it, and I can see that. But so I'd rather we took it forward in that way, and then fed that back into the Farmer State Advisory Group, Lynn. That's not to say there won't be opportunities for call-in by scrutiny of Cabinet. Of course, that is a role. Scrutiny could have it first, the policy, but I'm not certain the merit of separation, but they will have access to those things. I'd rather feed this into that. Of course, it's your paper. You can say that, but that's what I would like to do, because I think it's a really valuable paper. I think it's a timely intervention, particularly given the discussion that Cabinet had last week about our capital finances and having to draw our horns in if we can't release some assets to help us pay down revenue on the borrowing that we have. And therefore, I'd like to just include it in real time, as it were, rather than separate the process. So that's my request. It's entirely in your hands, Chair, but I do see that as a positive way forward. And I thank you for the work you've done on this.
No, thanks very much, Leader, for sharing your position on this and the progress that's been made. It's extremely helpful that we can all share that kind of intel with each other, so everyone knows exactly where the authority is in progressing with these matters. Whichever route the paper takes, my preference is that it is a paper that it's Governance and Audit Committee's paper. However it plugs in, it's Governance and Audit Committee's paper. Clearly, Gareth is the chair of that particular working group and has coordinated the authorship of that paper. But I wouldn't be comfortable with the paper going into process as Gareth's paper. It needs to go in as a paper from Governance and Audit Committee, whichever shape or form it takes. But I will also look to CAF and to Democratic Services colleagues to advise on the most appropriate route that a paper from Governance and Audit Committee takes in a space like this. CAF.
Thank you, Claire. This paper was brought to Governance and Audit Committee today to have approval for the recommendations to be put towards to Cabinet. Now, I know that the service area are producing a paper that is going to their relevant scrutiny committee, and the discussions in the working group would then that paper, when it goes to Cabinet, would then have these recommendations as an additional paper with that. Take Councillor Jake Leader's request. We can have a look at that outside of this meeting and just work out where, between yourselves, where we want it to go. But the process usually is the paper has come here for the Governance and Audit Committee to read through, give their approval for the recommendations to go forward as they are, or whether the recommendations need to be amended. And then that would then fall into going to Cabinet. Now, as I say, there may be a slight delay between this meeting and it reaching Cabinet because there is another paper following the consultation that I know would be prepared.
Okay, so I think, and Kath, I'm looking for you for guidance. So if I'm getting any of this is going to be the wrong thing, to give me a shout. I think what we are able to do today is for Governance and Audit Committee members to comment on those Governance and Audit Committee members who are not on the working group. Well, those who are on the working group can comment as well, but they've had less involvement, to please today comment on the paper so that we can finalise and agree the paper so that it is a Governance and Audit Committee approved paper. If we could do that today, please, we will then take stock in the light of the leader's position and what's happening in the world of the maturity of this consultation and its development, and Kath's advice and guidance as to what happens next. But today, I think what we need is for the paper to be signed off, if it can be, by the committee. Is that okay, Kath? Thank you.
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah. So I'm looking to committee members, especially those who've not been involved in the working group, to give us any comments on the paper so that we can, at the very least today, get the paper to a stage where it can be signed off as a committee report. Yeah, I've got Councillor Graham.
Chair, just simply, I'm happy to propose.
Thank you. So Councillor Graham is proposing that we sign off the paper, and I'm looking for a seconder, and then we can have a show of hands. So John is seconding. Can we have a show of hands, please? Is that okay, Carrie-Anne?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. So that's the first step on the paper's journey. It can now be recognised as a report from Governance and Audit Committee, and we will now take, outside of the meeting, not right now, outside of the meeting, we will take Kath's advice as to how to route the paper most appropriately through council governance. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
But in doing so, we don't look a gift horse in the mouth in terms of what the leader has offered us an opportunity for this paper to inform a very important decision-making process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we need to take stock outside of the meeting, but at least we now know that we've got an approved paper that we can take. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Gareth, for leading that work, and thank you, members, for approving the paper. Councillor Jake, did I see your hand up, or was it just a wee?
No, I did put it up just to clarify. Whatever route the paper officially takes and where it goes and as an appendices to officer reports, that goes through that process. What I think you have agreed is that it's a published paper on your behalf. I can take that away and feed that into my live discussions with others to help inform, and that's all I was trying to do. Not.
Oh yes. I mean, the paper's in the public domain now, so it can inform your deliberations and your work.
That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Gareth, especially for conducting that exercise on our behalf. I'll move us to our final item, which is the work programme, and as Carrie-Anne has started to do, which is really helpful, to detail out the work programme for the next 2 meetings. And I'm not going to make any particular comment. There are a couple of items postponed until January, a couple of items postponed until November. on the value for money report. Wee bit disappointing that that's been postponed a day, but I think actually today's meeting and today's discussion in connection with the item we just had on climate change and the items we had with Audit Wales on risk management more generally demonstrate how important value for money reporting is. So I think we want to get that right. So I think it does make sense that officers have a bit more time to bring a value for money report that is a good report to us. Does anyone else have any comments on the immediate forward work programme for the November meeting, the November meeting is actually an extra meeting for us, believe it or not. So it just shows you how full our agendas are. Councillor Pete, I can see, and then John.
Yeah, I guess just the obvious comment actually, Chair, is in a way it's a good job those 4 items were postponed today, because we are already over time. And then when I look at that, not only the number of items for the next meeting, which is now going to be 15, but what's involved in those, I do just fear that that's going to be a heck of a tough meeting.
I know, and it wasn't in our original schedule. Right, okay, John.
Same point.
Yeah, same point. Okay, if there are no other substantive comments on our forward work programme, I am going to move to close the meeting. I will do so by thanking all the officers and Audit Wales colleagues for all the work that goes on behind preparation for the committee meetings, and thank Carrie-Anne and Kath for their patience with the membership of these meetings, especially me when I get things wrong. And thank everyone for their attendance. And if members of the committee could stay briefly if they are available. I know we're a wee bit over, so you might not be, just to have a very short committee reflection. If you can stay for another 5 minutes, I'd be very grateful. But thank you very much to everyone for their attendance today, and especially officers for preparation. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.